Welcome to Bills. I'm Laura Haywood, and I'm joined today by two incredible talents of the American theater to talk about a brilliant new production. The show is Fiddler auf dem Dach, or Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish, and I promise that's the only time I'm going to try to speak Yiddish. My guests are the leading actor of the musical, Steven Skybell, who plays Tevye, and the show's director, world-renowned legend of stage and screen, and one of my absolute heroes and idols, Mr. Joel Grey. If we were talking about a different show, I might say Willkommen. That's also the last time I'm going to try to speak German. Welcome, Joel and Steven. Thank you so much for coming in to talk about Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish.
We love the show, and we'll love seeing you.
Well, I love the show also, and I have loved Fiddler for years, but not my whole life. I think I'm like many people who saw about 100 high school productions and was like, you know, I'm kind of done with Fiddler. And then the 2016 revival came along. I went to see it with a friend and fell in love with the show. And I saw that production 7 times. And now I've discovered this version, which is intimate and raw and beautiful and so relatable, even though it's in a language that I don't natively speak. I'd love to have each of you talk about what it means to be involved with Fiddler, and specifically, why Yiddish and why now?
You want me to go first, really?
Sure.
You're
the star.
I'm involved in it because I was cast in it by this gentleman, but I do go all the way back to the movie in 1970, seeing that movie, and as a little Jewish boy growing up in a small Texas town, that was a very powerful moment to see a Jewish leading man and a story about Jews. And so Fiddler has been a musical that I've loved and have been in. I've played Tevye when I was 17. I played Tevye when I was 21. And then I had a long hiatus. And then I finally got to play Tevye in a age-appropriate time. And the joke is, when I got cast, I did sort of roll my eyes and said, just my luck, I'm playing him in Yiddish. Like, what will that be, and how long will that be around for? Mm-hmm. But of course, it's been an unbelievable challenge and honor to play Tevye in the language in which Sholem Aleichem would have imagined him and created him in. And what started for me as an opportunity to play Tevye and a very challenging, curious way to present him in Yiddish has become such a meaningful and magical and amazing opportunity and time in my life to be doing it right now. Right now, in 2019, Fiddler on the Roof has become a musical that is much more than just the nostalgic view of a rose-colored history lesson of what it was then to be a Jew. And we have found time and time again with our audiences, Jew or Gentile, it speaks to what it is to be told you must leave your country, and what it is to be told there may not be room for you at the table where you're going. And that is a meaningful message, a painful message in 2019 that still resonates.
Joel, was this production your idea?
No, not at all. I was just minding my own business, and I got a call from the gentleman who runs the Folksbiene, Zalman Molotek, and he said, we're going to do Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish.
Is that the Museum of Jewish Heritage?
That's it.
Oh, look, I do understand Yiddish. Just kidding.
And he said, we're going to do this production that's not been done for 50 years. It was done in Israel.
This translation?
After it was a hit here, a man by the name of Shraga Friedman wrote a Yiddish version that played in Israel and didn't...
For 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. And then it played in Hebrew for months.
Wow.
They don't like Yiddish over there. They don't feel that's their... They're making a place that's new and not those Jews from Anatevka that are running away from people.
Right.
They're going and they are there to make a homeland for them. And of course, all that is so complicated now. It's just not clear or easy to even discuss. But I don't speak Yiddish.
You speak some.
I don't.
What about those songs you used to sing when you were a young cabaret performer?
I memorized some of the Yiddish songs because the audience liked it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't turn that down. So I did know some of those key words, and nobody in my family spoke Yiddish, and my mom and dad. Mm-hmm. My father was a great Yiddish comedian, and he wrote funny songs in Yiddish. But did I understand it? No. Could I speak it? No. So I called the man in the next morning, Mr. Mlotek, and I said, yes. Aww. I don't know why I did or how, but I somehow connected with this story and this time that we're living in right now. I somehow knew that even if we played for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, which is probably what it was meant to do, it would be special. And I found perfect Tevye early on.
What happened to him? Just kidding.
He's flourishing.
He really is. Did you have to learn Yiddish for this?
Well, I did, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my version is, so I grew up Jewish, but my grandparents spoke Yiddish as a way to prevent anyone from knowing what they were saying. So I heard Yiddish, but I couldn't speak Yiddish. Then I was bar mitzvahed, and I knew that I did know that there was something. I just didn't want to lose the knowledge of the Hebrew letters. So I just wanted to always remember what the Hebrew letters were. So my brother and I decided, well, maybe we'll learn Yiddish. So we tried to learn Yiddish in our adulthood over the phone. And that was like the blind leading the blind. Anyway, I then sought out a lady at the blind leading the blind. But I did study privately with a lady at Northwestern one summer, and when I met with the people at the Folksbiene, they were like, why? What's with you and Yiddish? And I could tell them truthfully, and that I one day imagined maybe me and Yiddish might have something to do on the stage together. And because I knew I had been in a play years ago, right out of drama school at the Public Theater, about the heyday of the Yiddish theater. And I knew that there was such a wealth of Yiddish performance history, even in New York City, but in the world. And so, and Yiddish songs, I sang Yiddish songs growing up, would sing them for my parents, you know.
What songs?
My Yiddish Mama, Papyrossen, Rosenkiss mit Mandeln, all.
Joel, use your mic so everyone can hear you. Speaking of Yiddish songs, if you're putting him on the spot.
Papyrossen.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I thought we might hear a Home on the Range.
I get mir heim mit der Weibele schön, wo die Schiebs in der Ziegelach laufen. I get mir a Haus mit gesunde Cowboys und a couple hundred cattle zu verkaufen. Everybody can sing now. Heim off the range. Everybody's not singing.
What you guys might not know is that Joel was singing those words like 60 years ago as a little boy named Joel Katz on the cabaret circuit with his father, and he still got it. Yeah. Still got it. And Steven, what I know about you is that you are a great Shakespearean actor.
Yes,
studied at Yale Drama.
Yes.
And I know that you spent a significant amount of time working at the Globe Theatre in London, in England.
That's right.
I've heard you talk about how speaking the language the way that it was initially intended to be performed in terms of Shakespeare connected you more to the work. And I imagine that with Fiddler and Yiddish, you're having a similar experience.
Absolutely. I mean, it is the same experience, which is trying to speak in a language that is not naturally my language, but trying to imbue it with life and moment-to-moment living, so that anyone who, I mean, and anyone who comes and sees it would say, well, that person is speaking the language that they were born to speak. And the greatest a compliment I got downtown at the Museum of Jewish Heritage is when these old Yiddish-speaking, not so old Yiddish-speaking people would come up to me after the show and start rattling off to me in Yiddish, thinking that I was a Yiddish speaker, and I would have to burst the bubble and say I'm just a performing seal, and I was told what to do. But the tools I used with Shakespeare, which is to say, take this type of English that may not sound natural or feel natural to us in 2019 and make it be natural and real. It was a muscle that I had developed with Shakespeare that I absolutely applied to the Yiddish to really try and have it be lived.
What I'd like to point out as a non-Yiddish speaker, understander, and as an audience member is that I expected to have to go in and work pretty hard at this production. I expected it to be kind of like those Italian operas where the super titles are either way up here or way down here, and that you have to kind of choose whether you're going to look at the action or look at the words, and they kind of come out feeling wiped out, like you'd had a workout. The way the design of this production is, it's very pared down, and the translations, which are in English as well as Russian. They're to the side, but not like way off to the side. So I was able to follow along through my peripheral vision and actually kind of forget that I was reading along. It was almost like two parts of my brain were working separately, and I was able to understand the Yiddish.
Maybe you were Jewish in another life.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Me neither.
So this is not... I didn't see the production at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, which I regret. And I think the reason was I thought it wasn't a production for me. And I'm kind of ashamed of that. I should have gone and sought it out anyway. Now the show is off Broadway. It's tickets are on sale for several more months. People definitely should go see it. And I really want to stress that you don't have to speak Yiddish. You don't have to be Jewish. And you may even not need to know whether or not you like Fiddler to go, because it really is a show for everyone, especially in this moment.
Yeah.
Joel, once I found out that I was going to get to sit down with you today, I reread your autobiography, and I found myself...
Taxi!
We're about to go in deep. I found some beautiful, difficult, and in some cases, like tear-inducing parallels between Fiddler on the Roof and the life of Joel Grey.
Really?
You spend a good deal of your book talking about your coming out as a gay man, and about how there is a particularly moving passage about how your mother reacted to it. And all I could think about was Tevye and Chava when she says she's going to marry a Russian officer, and her father just, after being, she's the third daughter, and Tevye has accepted one daughter being a little bit revolutionary, the next daughter being a little bit more revolutionary, but then there's a point where a relationship breaks. Did you think about that at all as you were directing this?
No, I didn't actually. I'm sure it was part of my DNA and the way I approach everything, but I didn't think about that specifically. But that's an absolutely horrendous moment in the book, and a horrendous moment on stage.
Well, I hope you don't mind me bringing it up. To me, it's a moment I think too many people have experienced, and to see their own experience reflected back on the stage can be a real moment of catharsis. And I bring it up only to encourage people to go seeking that catharsis through the work.
Thank you.
You also you say in the very closing of your book, you say that this is not that you
Hasn't finished it yet.
The book. Oh yeah, sorry. Well,
it's a cliffhanger.
Spoiler alert. You also say that you. That you now know people who you're growing up in a world that is not the one that you were born into, and I think that as at the end of Fiddler, another spoiler alert, as the townspeople are leaving Anatevka and going off to wherever they're going. It's a brand new world, and I think that that what I see in terms of the way that that in our lifetimes, and certainly in your lifetime, the way the world looks at the gay community and the way that that the Jews were persecuted and had to go find their own new way. I just saw so many parallels in that.
I think there are.
And I appreciated the side-by-side experiences of thinking about and experiencing this show and relating it to the plights of all sorts of communities of people who have been pushed out or silenced throughout history.
Well, and that is something that has happened with our production. And I've said this to people, that when I first experienced Fiddler, it was you saw it almost as a nostalgic story of a historical past, and because of the events, the current events, while we were performing Fiddler down at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, is when the folks were murdered in their synagogue at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and so. It speaks, yes, it speaks to all oppressed people, all disenfranchised people, but the truth is also that even Jews who may in America have felt, oh, we made it to America and now we are status quo, that everything is always on a bit of a sand bed for everyone. And that to me is what's meaningful and beautiful about the story of Tevye and his daughters, is that here's a guy who's well into his latter half of his life and is being forced to re-examine how he has lived his life and to make adjustments accordingly. And that's what Tevye does. And then ultimately it is, I think it's a story of hope and a positive story, but what happens to him happened to Jews in the past, is happening to Jews now, happens to all sorts of people all over the world. So what might have felt like a happy musical with heart is a musical with a deep message too now, that we really want to listen to and hopefully move forward, seeing the plight of these Jews of 1905 to say, how can our world become a better place for all people?
What I spent a lot of time thinking about what happens next. And actually, Al Silber, who was in the 2016 production, wrote a sequel to Fiddler on the Roof that follows the middle daughter and Perchik, her husband, and as they go off on their adventures, which is an incredible read. It's called After Anatevka. But I also think a lot about the two younger daughters. I always want to, is it Spilka and
Bielke and Sprintze.
Sprintze. I always want to say sprinkle, and I know that that's just a horrible.
Spilkes is something else.
Right.
Did I just say a bad word?
No, Spilkes is when you have Spilkes, you're on pins and needles. You're just a little bit kind of, what's going to happen?
That's not her name.
That's not her name. Sorry.
But do you know what
happens? I promise not to speak Yiddish.
Sprintze has a story that Sholem Aleichem tells about her.
What happens to her?
She unfortunately commits suicide.
Geez.
She gets involved with a rich family and a rich Jew, and they kind of take her on a turn, and she ends her life. She ends her life, which is not a happy story. I think at one point they were going to try to incorporate that in the musical, but they're like, that's one too many daughters and it's one too many downers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do think about that when at the last scene I have a little moment upstage with my Sprintze, and just to know that's her future is not happiness, but trouble, you know.
Oh, that bums me out.
Yeah.
I was like picturing them moving to America, and like if they were, 6 and 10 in 1905, then theoretically they might have been around in my lifetime and gotten to. And if they moved to, I don't think it was them that was moving to Chicago, but if they moved here and moved in with relatives, and
it was a story.
What? They're not
but
real?
you can think that Bielka may have ended up in Congress for all we know.
Yeah, or at least had a granddaughter in Congress.
That's it.
I think the bottom line is that this is a living piece of art. And you can say it's just a play, but
I don't believe that. I do think it's something deeper than that. And the idea that very close friends of mine who have come, who are not Jewish, and are weeping at the end and don't know why. And I think it's that we're all part of a humanity and that everybody's stories are ours. And they were, these people are able to find something in their background that's like these characters.
absolutely. I mean, I certainly called my dad immediately after seeing the show, and there's something special about the dad-daughter thing for me. But there are also ways that
And I got one too.
What?
And I got one too. A daughter.
Yes, you do. You have a delightful
And a
daughter.
granddaughter.
You do.
I do.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. She's 17.
Whoa. Well, look, I'm glad to see that are they all Grays? I know Gray is another spoiler alert from Joel's book, not the biological last name, not the original last name. Little Jolie Katz. What?
Okay.
Well, I'm just glad to see the Grays are continuing along.
No. There are no more Grays.
Oh, because Jennifer
married
uses
Clark
a different.
Gray.
Well, anyway, we're going off
Right.
on a tangent. I'm so happy to see you both, and I can't wait to go back and see this again, and to just be reminded that if we continue to all show up for each other, the world will be a better place, no matter what the powers that be may be trying to impose upon us. And it's got some sadness, but it is ultimately a celebration of togetherness, family, and ultimately
Hope.
yeah, I was going to say it's got elements of tradition, but it's also about bending tradition to modernize, and that love and hope are the bottom line.
Thanks for this.
Well said.
We have time for a couple of questions from the audience. And we're going to start right over here.
Hi. At the beginning of the show, Tevye comes on stage pulling the cart. And this is something I've always wondered about. He looks at the audience and says, "Today I am a horse." Did it ever occur to you that he's echoing the bar mitzvah phrase, "Today I am a man"?
It has to me. That's just private, but
No, I never thought of
yeah, today I am a man. Yeah, I have always thought that, but
I have
sure.
a lot of friends who've never put it together and just wondered.
yeah, I always from early on heard that echo. Today I am a man. Today I am a horse. But what do you do with it? I'm not 100% sure. You know, I mean, it's if the creators and if that's what they had in mind by starting that the role of Tevye with "Today I am a horse," echoing the bar mitzvah. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because oddly enough, a lot of the people who created this musical, except for Jerry Robbins, were not particularly Jewish, even though they were Jewish. You know, they were not in the deepest sense connected to Judaism the way Jerome Robbins was.
We do know that Tevye loves a pun on scripture, though. Like he talks to God, and he's kind of.
Well, that is an aspect of the Yiddish version that I really
And that's
love.
what he does. He talks to God.
Yeah.
In my life, you mean?
Yeah. And I do too.
And
we're welcoming you.
Tevye, you want to be a Jew?
What was that word?
We're
Want to be a
welcome.
Jewish man?
You're inviting me to be a Jewish man?
No.
I think I'm good.
A bocher.
That's Yiddish. Good for you.
Well, I won't get the Yiddish jokes in this context because I don't have the little super titles translating them. But I trust you that they're funny. Let's take one more question from the audience.
Hi. This is This is such an emotional show, and I was wondering if in your past, other than Fiddler, there's a role or show that has affected you more than others.
Yes, I was in a show called Stop the World, I Want to Get Off by Anthony Newley, and I played that character of the clown little chap, and he has treated his wife so callously and really not been a very good father and just done awful things. And at the end, he sings, as Anthony Newley wrote for himself, "What kind of fool am I?" And it was a moment that anybody could relate to that had not done the right thing. And it was a big song and a good theatrical moment.
I'll say that Tevye really has always been for me one of the most emotionally connectable roles for me. And even at 17, and this is interesting what you brought up, at 17, I remember rehearsing at the National Music Camp in Interlochen, Michigan as Tevye. And the first time I sang Chavela in rehearsal, I broke down crying. And until maybe today, I couldn't tell you why that happened. But it may have been something about the pressure of letting parents down, and as a 17-year-old playing the father but having the child who has let him down is interesting. But Tevye has always been so deeply connected to me, and I would say that the second to that would be Richard II by Shakespeare. That performing those two roles, it sometimes doesn't even feel like work, in that you're just pulled along by the character and the character's situation, and things happen without kind of consciously trying to construct them. And that, I mean, ideally that's what an actor wants for every role they play, but to be given an opportunity to play a role that is in such a river with you and just currents you along is a joy beyond belief if you're a performer.
It's a joy as an audience member to watch too, and I can say that as somebody who also sometimes struggles with Shakespeare, and I'm like, I don't know what they're saying. It's English, but but then when you see it done where the actors truly understand what they're saying, somehow I do understand those words that are foreign.
Yeah.
And this production of Fiddler is the same way. It's done in such an evocative way, and even all those actors who didn't speak Yiddish before learning these parts, maybe there was something in having to learn it phonetically that it became even more important to understand the subtext or to understand the meaning of the text because
Well, we rehearsed first in English.
Right.
Whoa.
We would be we had only 3 weeks to get this together downtown, and so we'd be cracking our heads trying to cram the Yiddish into our heads.
And
then we'd come
insisting.
into rehearsal, and Joel would say, "Okay, let's first do it in English." And it's like, well, I haven't been even thinking about it in English. So, but we did it in English.
Did you do it according to the script in English, or did you do it like in making up the?
No, it either would, from my point of view, would be a translation of the Yiddish.
Exactly.
But if I couldn't quite be there yet, I would just fall back to the Broadway version.
Right, because you knew it.
Yeah, so it's like so it was a mishmash for me. But the idea was obviously that we as English speakers have to be connected to this material through our own vernacular before we can just start to put on another language, and Joel was insistent on that, and
drove them crazy.
But I do want to say before our time is up, that the true genius of this production is this man sitting right here, and he has such a name. You could think he just sort of waltzed in and waltzed out and said, "Oh, do that," and I'll be back tomorrow. But he took us step by step through his vision of what this musical could be, what it was, and some of it had never really been unearthed in the way that Joel saw it and believed it. And so it just was, day in, day out, was mind-blowing to see the depth of his understanding of what this musical was.
Thank you.
I can't think of a better way to sum up our time together. Thank you, Steven. Thank you, Joel. It's been an honor to have you here. Everyone, tickets are on sale now for Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish.
Thank you.